Hey everyone, Editor Mike here. Just wanted to let you know that when we did this recording, I accidentally used the wrong microphone, and so you're gonna get a computer mic with lots of background noise this time, but next time we do recording, I will double check that. Also, this is coming out in the middle of Advent of Code, and so we talk about it as if it hasn't happened yet, but by the time you're hearing this, we'll already be in the thick of it. So good luck everyone out there who is working on the Advent of Code, and enjoy this episode about Everybody Codes. Thanks.
Hey, Matt.
Hello?
Would you like to do a podcast?
Yeah, I'd like that. That'd be fun.
Quack, quack.
Oh, you're
Welcome.
doing duck noise.
Shut up. Welcome to Hacking the Grepson, where I do terrible animal interpretations. That
And I just
supposed to
do
be
weird
about-
noises.
Weird noises and bad ducks. That's what this podcast is about. It's also about programming and developing and creating and solving problems. And hey, guess what? It's near the end of November, so we're about a week away from the next Advent of Code, 2024.
That's why they call it the
unlocking
most
soon.
wonderful time of the year. It's because Advent
Indeed.
of Code season.
It is. And that means that you will definitely be getting some future episodes about Advent of Code. But it hasn't started yet, so we got a little itchy to start solving some problems. And so I think it was Matt, you actually brought up this this Advent of Code like called Everybody Codes. You want to tell us about it?
Sure. I don't know much about it, but I'll tell you what I know.
There's ducks.
So, yeah, there's ducks, hence the duck noise. So I am, just like I'm in an Advent of Code channel on the Slack that you and I are on, I am also on one at work. And somebody posted this the other day. It's like, hey, this is very similar to Advent of Code. Come check it out if you like that. And they created a leaderboard. And I haven't had the time or the bandwidth to work on it very much like I would with Advent of Code. But I've been enjoying it. It's basically the same idea where you have a daily for, I'm assuming, a month. It looks like there's 20. Looks like there's going to be 20 quests, as they call them, on this. You have a storyline, much like Advent of Code does. I would say it's even less less relevant here, if
It's
that's
not
possible.
Christmas themed, so
Yeah, but yeah, we are
Santa.
we're in the kingdom of algorithmia, and we are helping set up for the great tournament of algorithmia. Is basically the premise of solving the problems, and then like I've only done the first 2 days. I haven't even finished the second day altogether. But like the first one is the battle for the farmlands, and you had to like figure out how many healing potions you needed to fight off whatever it is that we were fighting. As I think it was like bugs and animals, right? So it's the same kind of idea as Advent of Code, and then you can write it however you want. Submit your answer, which is usually like a number, into a little text box and tells you if you got it right. One thing I do like better so far about Everybody Codes is when I get an answer wrong, I feel like it gives me more hints as to how far off I am. It's like, yes, the first digit is wrong, or the first digit is right, and the number of digits is correct. Or you are too small or too big. Like, I think too large or too small is what you get from Advent of Code, but this gives a little bit more. I'm like, oh, I have a typo. Or I made a stupid logic mistake. It was much easier to find because of one of those hints.
yeah, I agree with all that. I wanted to give a little more background on who created this.
Great. You would tend to know that stuff better than me.
Yes, I have read the homepage. Emil Kaczynski appears to be the person who created this site, and they basically did Advent of Code. They did every event from 2015 multiple times using different programming languages. And they were so inspired by that they got curious about creating something, and so they created Everybody Codes. And it's interesting that they say that it's, they name check Advent of Code and say it's similar, but with its own twists, both easier and harder, friendlier and trickier. So just trying to cover all the bases. It's like Advent of Code, but also not like Advent of Code. Yeah, it's got 20 quests. Another interesting thing that's different about it is that each quest has 3 parts instead
Yes.
of the normal 2 parts. So they kind of break up the because each quest, much like every day in Advent of Code, is the same basic setup, and usually part 1 is the easier kind of algorithm to figure out, and then 2 is where they usually just okay, now do it with 200,000 times.
Yeah, that's
just
where they throw in
input
the
or
twist.
something.
It's like, here's a normal problem. Now make it hard. Now you need to use dynamic programming, right? That's this.
Right.
That's usually the part 1 versus part 2, especially in the later days of Advent of Code. This has 3, and it's like part 1 seems relatively easy, and I think that's what I think they even said that it's made for anyone to be able to solve. Maybe even like an Excel spreadsheet if you wanted to. Like it's that straightforward. And then part 2 is a little bit more complicated. I haven't had problems with the part 2s I've done, which is all 2 of them. And part 3 ramps up to like the level of difficulty of like some of the later day problems in Advent of Code, like right away, is from what I'm seeing from going through these.
Yeah.
So
You know,
it gets harder
wow.
faster, but you have more steps.
And why don't we just go over our experiences with the problems?
Well, that's a good idea.
Okay, so I'll take quest 1 because I've done all the parts, and I feel like it was pretty straightforward. I don't remember having too much of an issue with it, but here's the basic idea: is that quest 1, you're having a battle. You're a brave. All the brave knights are given a specific piece of land to protect, but the job isn't just about fighting magical creatures. The battle requires using healing potions, which must be planned ahead of time. So essentially, you're thrown into a battle. There's ancient ants, badass beetles, and creepy cockroaches. And your input is essentially a list of those monsters shortened to just the first letter. So you'll get something like ABBAC. And each monster has a certain number of potions that you need to have on your person in order to fight them and not die. And so, like, the A's don't use any potions, the B's use 1, and the C's use 3. So, based on a certain setup of monsters, figure out how many potions you need.
Yeah, and you want the exact number of potions that you need
Right.
because capitalism, I guess. I don't know. For some reason, we're not just going to give you more
Efficiency.
potions than you need. You need exactly the right amount. We're not going to give you
Yeah.
any
Well-
extras.
Yeah.
And then that sequence of letters is the order that those creatures show up to be attacked or to attack you, I guess.
Yeah.
So what did you think of that first, like, that part 1 level difficulty?
Yeah, the part 1 level difficulty was pretty easy. I mean, it's as far as I did it in Ruby because whenever I do stuff like this, I don't know. I default to using Ruby. I'm going to assume you defaulted using Python.
Correct. Yep. Although I am considering trying different languages this year for Advent of Code just to like learn some new things. So I might, once I can get myself inspired enough to work on these, maybe I'll dip into that.
Yeah, after not doing Advent of Code for a while, like when it ended and I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I don't think I'm going to be able to solve any more of these. I spent a lot of time over the last year going to some of the older years and trying out different languages just for fun. But then eventually life gets in the way and I can't just constantly work on programming things. So it's been a while since I've done something like this, at least like a good 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
So I have to like get myself back into it. But I spent so much time on last year's Advent of Code setting up my kind of like framework of like how you create a puzzle, how you get the input and all that kind of stuff that I was able to just crib that for everybody codes and use the same kind of thing where I can just go to like run year day and it will find the year and the day and run my solution, which I just find very satisfying. Speaking of doing automation and making things easier, I find that a lot easier than, going to the directory and...
I was about to say, that's very Factorio of you.
Yes. It's just, I spent all that time, might as well use it, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't want that to be a one-off, so...
Why not?
So yeah, the first part, I just have an input of the letters coming in, and it's just a simple loop, and it just says, if it's a B, add a potion. If it's a C, add 3, and then just skip A because it doesn't change, and done.
I don't even have my code for this because I just did it in the interpreter for Python. It was that simple for this
Yeah,
one.
it is pretty
It's
simple.
Here is a string. Turn all the A's into go through them, map all of them to this number value from this map, and then
Smart.
zip it up. Basically, I think is what I did. I'm not even sure. I probably didn't even use reduce or zip. I probably just did a map and then called sum on that list that it gave me.
Yep.
And so it was like 2 lines of code.
Yes, it was a very simple one. So part 2, tell us what part 2 was.
I'm curious, actually, before we go on to that, do you have yours? Do you have it pulled up, like where you've submitted?
I do.
What is your part 1 answer? What answer did it give you? Like, I'm curious how different the input is
So you want to know what my answer for my input was?
for part 1.
It was 1280.
Okay, so they are different because mine was 1313. So one of the things that Advent of Code does is everybody's input is unique.
Right.
And I was curious if this place did that, and it sounds like they
I
did.
would think they'd have to, just because otherwise you could crib off of someone else,
Yeah. Well, it depends on are you doing this because you want to challenge or because you want to win? And those are different things. Like for someone like me, I don't care about winning. I want to solve this problem myself. So if we had the same answers, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, and another thing I wanted to mention is that one thing that threw me off originally, going into part 2 and part 3, is that the inputs for each part are different. Even the samples are different. And I accidentally used like an old one because in Advent of Code, you usually just get the one base input for the day, and then each part uses that. Whereas this one, literally each part. So there's 3 inputs and 3 samples for every quest, which is just another layer of it's a lot of data. So anyway, part 2.
So yeah, part 2, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but effectively they introduce a new foe called the Diabolical Dragonfly. So they really like their alliterative names in alphabetical order. This enemy, I will read, is a fast and tricky enemy, hard to hit. This creature requires 5 potions to defeat it. So that's one twist that they put in the second. The other part is that this time the enemies can join forces in pairs, making them tougher to defeat. And then, if I remember correctly, this one also has you start. Oh no, that's the next days. Never mind. Okay, so those are the 2 twists on this one: is adds dragonfly and adds pairs. So when they work in pairs, it is the number of potions you would need to defeat each creature plus 1 potion per creature, so plus 2, right? So, and then there's an X if they are not battling with someone. So the input now looks like A, X, B, C, D, D, C, A, X, D. And that means that first AX is A by itself, which is no potions. And then the next one's BC, which means B and C fight together. B was 1 potion and C was 3, so that'd be 4. And then there's 2 of them, so it's 6, right? So it does that kind of thing, and then on and on. And so you get the new total of potions you need and fight that. So how did you go about, this is the one where I actually do have my code. How did you go about solving this one?
I was checking the pair. So now I'm checking it in like a 2-character window instead of a 1-character window. And essentially, if either of those characters are an X, then it changes the mod that I add to their cost. And then I check the first monster of the pair and the second monster of the pair. I add the appropriate mod, and then I add it all up, and that got it.
It's somewhat similar to what I did. I mean, I imagine there's only so many ways to do this. I kept my scores map, that A is 0, B is 1, etc. And then I wrote a get pairs function because I found it somewhat painful to extract pairs out of that string as opposed to there wasn't a good way to just split it off the top of my head. So I just wrote I used some list comprehension to do these 2 letters and then skip 2 to build out the pairs. So I get the pairs. That was just like a 1-line list comprehension in Python. And then I have a score pair function. So I just iterate over all the pairs and get pairs, and I add a total to score pair. And then the score is, if it's 2 X's, then it's 0. That's my base case. Otherwise, if one of them is an X, just return the score for the other one, and otherwise return 2 plus the scores combined. Right? It's very straightforward. I imagine I could collapse this entire thing into just a couple of lines of like list comprehension if I wanted to make it difficult to understand. But in a hey, let's write code that you were going to revisit. I didn't.
Right. If this was code golf, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Code golf. I like that. What about part 3?
Okay, so part 3 just adds the fact that they can now attack in a trio. And if they are attacking in a trio, then you get 2 extra potions per creature. So I'm doing a thing where I take the characters and I sort them so that I get all the X's together for every trio, and do a similar kind of thing where I have a modification to the cost essentially of each monster, depending on whether it has if it has an XX next to each other, that means there's one going alone. If it has just an X, then that means there's a pair. And if there's no X's, that means it's a full trio. And then that just sets a mod to the cost. And then otherwise, you said, I forget what you said, that you set up like a hash or something where like an A is a 0, a B is a 1. Yeah,
That's how I always solve those kind of mapping problems.
Yeah, I just made a function instead, but it's pretty much the same thing. So I just go through the whole thing, and I have that window of 3. I check for the X's, and then I adjust the mod, and then I add it all up. So I don't remember if that took me... It definitely took me a bit longer than the other ones, but in general, it was pretty straightforward to follow along what you had to do there.
Yeah. I think sorting, it's a really interesting choice there. Not one I thought of, because that significantly reduces down the number of possible combinations within each triple, which would then mean you could, if you wanted to, I didn't do this, but you could just hard code the answers at that point. Triple X is 0, XXA is also 0, XXB is whatever the hell B was, 3, I think, and so on and so forth. So that's not what I did. I basically just expanded my previous solution, and what I'm realizing now is both my get trips now instead of get pairs and score triple methods instead of score pair could have been generalized to be get size, get some size of things, break it up in this way, and then like score that size, and that second one could be recursive pretty easily to kind of go through. But I didn't do that, so I basically stuck with the same thing. I get my triples, and then I go through the score. In the score, what I do is I look at each character in the triple, and if it's X, I start off with creatures and score both set to 0 for a given triple. And then I loop through those 3. If one of them's an X, I just continue. If it's a creature, I increment my creature number so I know how many creatures there are, and then I add the score of the creature to the score. So if it's A, it's 0, et cetera, right? And so then I at the end, so that's my score, and then I add the total number of creatures, or based on the total number of creatures, I add a modifier. So if there's no creatures, it's 0. If there's 1 creature, it gets a 1. If there's 2 creatures, it gets a 2. If there's 3 creatures, it gets a 6. Although now that I look at this, I'm not 100% sure that is accurate for the 1. Oh no, I guess it is. Okay. Oh yeah,
you just kind of
their B came out 1. So I think I actually I think I just found a bug in my code. I think that if creatures equals 1, but
you still got the right answer.
If creatures equals 1, return score. If creatures equals 2, return score plus 2. If creatures equals 3, score plus 6. Okay, I did catch that correctly. I just misread my code just now. I was like, did I miss the case and they just didn't have it in their test? Apparently not.
Yeah, the only extra function I made besides just the solution function was just a monster cost, and it just takes a monster and it takes a mod. So I figure out the mod beforehand, and then I get the cost of the monster plus the mod, and then sum that all up. So you did a similar thing. It's just you did like the monster cost and then added the mod, whereas I kind of added the mod to the monster cost.
Yeah,
based on the trio.
Yeah, it was just easier for me to think about in this way of like, okay, let's go through and do how many creatures I have, because that's how they laid it out, more or less. It's like 2 extra potions per creature. So yeah, I guess I could have just done extras and added 2 every time I ran into a creature, but it changes depending on how on if it's a group of 3 or a group of 2. So it's like, so the way you had to go through and do it with your mod is put that check into the immediate for loop if I was doing it my way. And I pushed I pushed that addition off to the end. I'm just like, how many creatures do I have? Okay, great, figure that out.
Yeah.
I am positive that there's more efficient ways of doing all of these.
Same.
But also,
And-
I was
and
like,
it's all-
but part of these is get it done.
Yeah, I mean that's always my thought. I'm terrible at thinking about this efficiently right away. I'm just like, okay, what do they want to know? All right, what's the first thing that pops into my head about how to make that happen, and then later think about how to make it more efficient. And especially on day one, at least thus far, they're not throwing crazy numbers at you. So like your algorithm can be inefficient and it doesn't matter. So I think day one was an interesting challenge, not too hard. Yeah. All parts were pretty easy. Let's go to quest 2, the Runes of Power.
Sure. I'll describe this one because I think you got through part 2, but didn't, or you started
I got
on
through
part 2, but you
1.
didn't get through?
I'm in the middle of part 2. I don't quite have it yet.
So you have the question for 2. Cool. So I'll read part 1, you read
yes.
part 2, and then I'll go into part 3, which I did not solve, but I have the question anyway. So we are once again Knights of the Order of the Golden Duck. And in this case, we are like an intern or something, a squire probably, that is charged with their equipment might have runes embedded in them, and if they have runes, then we need to count the number of runic words. I guess that shows like how powerful or the magic is or whatever. So you get in your input a list of words. So it's like words colon and then a comma separated list of words to look for, and then you get the string through which to search, and then you're looking for exact instances of those things. I think.
Well, and with overlap, you have to concern yourself with overlap.
Yeah, I was trying to remember if that was in the first part or not. It is. So, and if there's an overlap. So, for example, in their example, they have the and her both as words, and so the word there has both the and her in it in the same word, but what you end up with there, and so since we're counting the words, we need to know that they're both there. So it counts as 2 for there. That would be the and her.
Right.
And ultimately, we're just like, what's the number of words and runic words engraved on this helmet? 35 was my answer. And so this one is where I started to actually get a little bit more serious about how I organize my code, just because I knew I was actually going to work on it. So I in the previous one, I stored the input. I literally just copy pasted it into my code. Now I'm storing it off in a separate file. And I actually pasted in the text of the parts into my code so that I didn't have to keep going to look at I just put a big block comment at the top.
Nice.
So this one was incredibly simple for the first one, for how I solved it. I read in the runes first, so I get that line, and then I'm just parsing it out by starting after the keyword words colon, right? Mm-hmm. Then I'm splitting up the string on commas. So I'm basically just parsing up that string so I know what the list of words is, and then I get the inscription as a single line. And then for each rune, I count how many instances of that rune are in that line. And then that's my score. It's the total of those. So it's real, like just straight down the barrel kind of solution to it. How'd you solve it?
Yeah, I mean everything up to so my solution one is 3 lines, but the first two are the same as yours. I split on the words to get the runes, and I split on the text to get the text that it's checking, and then I have a function called rune count, which takes the runes and the text, which all could have been in that solution, but it was one of those things where maybe I would reuse that later. So I put it in a function, and we get a count. I check, and this is one of those things where I think I was like overthinking part one, but it was sort of helpful when I got to part two because you have to think more on part two. So I actually check all the rune lengths because I noticed actually no, you have to do. This was important even for part one because when I looked at my input, I noticed that despite the sample all having 3-character runes, the input had some 2-character runes and some 3-character runes. And, spoiler alert, when we get to part two, my input had a single character rune. So I didn't realize that they were different lengths. So I actually check the lengths and I sort them and I get the smallest one and I get the biggest one. And then that's my outer loop. So that and once again, I don't think this is a good way to do it. This is just the way I did it. So I basically go through the text and I check each rune against the line, but I go through it multiple times based on how long the rune is. So it goes through and checks 2-character runes and 3-character runes separately, which I know, once again, if this is not an efficient way to do it, but it did work.
I have some code review comments for the pull request here.
Yeah, no. As soon as I put one loop inside another loop, believe me, your disapproving glare appeared in my brain somewhere. I'm like, no, this is bad. Like I could smell the code being bad as I was writing it, but I'm like, but this is how my brain works. This is how it's gonna solve it. And then when it solved it, I got the positive feedback. It should have said, yeah, you solved it, but that was bad. Don't do it that way. But I still did it anyway. So then I think
the length of the word was irrelevant in the first problem. That's really the only problem with what you did. It's like it doesn't matter in the first part. It just cares about how many, because you care about the number of words, not the number of letters. But then you go on to part two.
I think it was because of the overlap that I originally didn't think about. Yeah. And in part two, the overlap was huge, and so
yes.
I was overthinking part one, which may have helped inform my part two because when it did matter. So anyway, yeah, that's what I did. I got the right letter.
We talk about inefficiencies when I talk about my part two solution. We'll encounter that, but you go into part two and your solution first.
So part two, I don't have the right answer yet, but I basically went about it in a similar way, except instead of doing a rune count, I was doing a symbol count. And that's because... Yes, part two. Okay, so part two, you figured it out. Yay. The list of potential runic words is the same thing. You still get an input with words, colon, and then a comma separated set of phrases to look for, essentially. But this time, you're not counting the runic words gestaltly. You're actually counting the letters that are being used. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the rules that govern what they're saying here, because they give you 5 lines. So instead of having one line of text, now you have multiple lines of text. And they show you like, okay, this line, awaken the POW adorned with the flame's bright ire. And they say, okay, it's got 15 runic symbols. Now this one is pretty easy compared to the first one because none of the words overlap. And also all of the runes that exist in the words are inside the words and they don't overlap across spaces or anything like that, which I was curious like whether that mattered or not. It doesn't seem to matter.
It would be an easy thing to solve for, but it doesn't matter in this case. In fact, spaces do matter. Like the
spaces
word
do matter
doesn't count for th space e doesn't
right.
count.
And I think that's something that I think that I was overthinking that before because in my first part I stripped out all the spaces and just smushed the text together because I thought that that mattered. I think I got away with it because there were no false positives in part one. There were no times where the runic word crossed a space gap. So it worked whether I got rid of them or not.
But then
Now
the
it
examples
matters.
here definitely have examples of that. So
Yeah,
the other
so-
thing with this one, though, for part two, is it also makes you check in both directions of the string.
Both directions, yes.
So OWE
Yes.
counts in one way, and EWO counts. Or the string EWO would count if you were reading it in reverse, because then it would become OWE. That was a pain to some extent, and just gets worse
Yeah.
in part three. Just spoiler alert.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, basically, what I did to solve this is I just made a new thing called symbol count, which still takes runes and text, but now is trying to count the letters and also and this is where this is probably the wrong way to go about it. And the thing that I did is that I would take like one line and run it through my algorithm and it would work. And then I would switch to another line, and then my algorithm wouldn't work. And then I would adjust my algorithm, and then that line would work. And then I'd go back to the previous one, and then it stopped working there again. And I just kept doing that over and over and over again. And I finally got a method that works for all 5 of the sample lines, but then fails on my input. So obviously, I'm doing one of those things where I'm just solving edge case after edge case, and I'm not getting the foundational algorithm right. And so as soon as they throw some edge case that I haven't thought about, it trips me up. And so that's kind of where I'm left. So what about you?
Okay, so I have 3 functions, and then not counting the main function, right? So I wrote a function to reverse a string, because as easy as that is to do in Python, it doesn't read well. So I just made one that literally it strips out it literally just reverses a string, and I called it reverse. So I
Yeah.
could just say reverse string. I wrote
See,
get
Ruby
root.
just has dot reverse, and it
Yeah,
reverses the
which
string.
annoyed me that I didn't have that, because I remembered that being, and I was like, where is this in Python? Oh, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You use array slicing. It's line, it's in the brackets of the array. It's : -1, which basically means do the entire thing and do it in reverse.
Ugh, no,
Which
don't do that.
I don't like the way that reads. So
Yeah.
whenever that happens, I hide them in functions.
Got it.
Then I have find ranges. So I originally went down kind of the similar path to what you did, and couldn't get it to work. So what I ended up doing was I made a set of ranges that are where each range. Basically, what I did is I go through and I identify all of the letters that are in any of the words. I put the index to the letter in a set, so that I'm only getting. So if I hit the same letter multiple times, it only counts once, right?
I was thinking about doing a set. I should have done that.
Yeah. So I do that, and so inefficiently. I'm like, I loop through. I'm looping through the inscription minus the length of the rune that I'm looking at. Oh, that's right. So I go through this and do this for each rune, and for each line in inscription. So I am going through for inscription in the thing. I create a set called found, and then I populate that within my main loop of for rune in runes, and then I add to that found set the union of the result of find ranges. So I'm adding the union of the set of all of the different ranges that the rune exists in. So like if the first four, so there is the end where the and her both are words, I would have returned 0 through 2, because that's the 0, 1, 2, that's the first the, and
1 through 3.
and then like 6 through 8 for the, and there is the end. So I would return that would come out of my first range, and then the second rune would find the next range, which would just be for her, right? And that would be 1 through 3, like you said. And then I union all of those together. So my first one would have included 1 and 2, 1 and 2, and my second one also includes 1 and 2 indexes into
And
the
then they
string.
cancel each other
and
out.
then I union the strings so that it's just give me the ones that are there, and then that's what I use to find the total. And I do that twice. So I have a nested for loop, always immediately a bad idea in my mind, but
Yeah.
I didn't see a better way to do it. Inside of that nested for loop, I call a function twice, one for the forward way, one for the reverse way. And inside of that function that I call twice is another nest for. So I have four loops in by the time
You
get
hate
to
yourself, don't you?
it went really fast. It wasn't too bad, but I don't like the way this is written at all, because it's like found gets found dot union, find ranges, rune inscription, and I feel like I could collapse a lot of that stuff, but it's not my job, so I just did a thing that worked.
So I did a way more convoluted thing that I like your way a lot better, which is not surprising. But the whole, like, I was doing a thing where I was finding the letters and doing, like, every time you found a T, it would add it to a hash for T. And if it wasn't there, create it with a 1. If it was there, just increment it. But then I wasn't getting the overlapping part.
Yep.
So the
I started
unioning-
that same way.
Yeah, the getting the chunks and then unioning the chunks was the piece that I didn't get to. I was just doing the letters. And so instead I did an insane thing, which was basically keeping track of the overlap. So if I found a match at like I equals 0, like in there is the end, and then I checked again for another one and I found her, it would know that the last time I found a match was 1 ago, because it was at 0, now it's at 1. And so then I use logic to say, oh, that means there's an overlap. And because it was only 1 space, there has to be an overlap of whatever the length of the rune is minus the index.
So
Something insane like that.
So you're only going through the inscription once.
Well, no, I do it both ways. I also
But
have
you're
the
starting
nested
at
for loop.
Every index you're starting and you're saying, am I getting a match at this index? And then I know where this is, so I can look at the prefix. I do it 1 rune at a time, so I couldn't do that kind of thing. You're doing it.
Right.
You're going through the inscription.
One
I'm doing
index
it
at a
for
time.
each rune, I'd go and do that. And I think that's where mine is less efficient than what you're doing, probably, but was much easier for me to think about.
But
no, because I have the quadruple for loop here.
right. Well, but I also have many nested for loops, and I think the only thing I might have done that is like a microscopic performance improvement is that I only do the reverse count if the reverse of the text doesn't equal the forward of the text. Like in the very last one, cac. There's no reason to. I think there was no reason to check because it's the same forwards and backwards, so you're not going to get. Somehow I got the answer by doing that.
Well, no, that would work. The set,
because it was counting it twice.
The set approach was how I solved that problem.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, I just don't care. I just get it twice, which is again less efficient, I think. For
right. Well, but obviously my approach hasn't gotten me the right answer. Just I mean, for a ballpark, I have like an answer of like 99.45. Is that anywhere close to your part 2?
My part 2 answer was 5,232. 5232.
Yeah, and your part 1 was very close to mine, so I'm thinking that I'm double counting.
Almost certainly. That's
stuff. Yeah.
I think I was like exponentially counting at one point. I just wasn't getting rid of the right things. And the problem for the most part has to do with like trying to keep track of individual letters doesn't work. Like you have to, or it does, but then you also have to keep track of the position for that letter, and then it doesn't matter. So it's like, what positions do I care about?
This is very reminiscent of an Advent of Code puzzle we did, where it was also doing a like look through this data and move a window and see where there's matches, like where are the mines located or something like that.
That is in fact where I pulled my inspiration for the ranges thing. Is that's how I solved that problem, and I forgot what the specific problem was, but I remembered overlapping ranges being a thing.
Yeah.
And so I have a way of solving it. I should probably learn the right way to solve that kind of overlapping range problem, because I'm sure there's something with like tokenizing, and I'm sure there's ways of doing it that are more intelligent than the way I did it. But I did get an answer.
If only we developed LLMs, we'd be experts at that kind of thing. All right, so part 3 I have not seen, but I'm okay with you telling me what it is.
Yeah. So part 3 I did not do, not because I don't know how to do it. I'm fairly certain I know what the solution is, but because that solution seems like a pain to implement, and I don't want to. Like, this is supposed to be fun, and that doesn't sound fun to me.
All right.
Which is kind of the trying to keep my mental health in check this year. That's been my approach to a lot of things. It's like, if I don't have to do it and it's not fun, I don't have to do it. So part 3, you have a new set of armor. It's a scale armor, and this one is covered in scales that are each etched with a runic symbol, and the scales are arranged in a rectangular grid, which I guess like connects right to left, like you would in like if you made a flat piece of paper into a cylinder, I guess.
Like Pac-Manning. Yeah.
Yeah. So it now wraps to itself, right? So if you had ETH, that would still count for the, because it would wrap around THE, right? That's one of the things they changed. The other is, not only are you counting forward and backwards, but you're also counting up and down. And that up and down thing, like, is a complete change to how my code would be. I'm like, okay, well, now I need to have a 2-dimensional grid, and I need to be able to all my setup would work fine for that, with like using the ranges and the unions and the set and all that. That would absolutely work. But navigating through the grid is annoying, and I know this from years of advent of coding. And if I'd written my other code with that in mind, probably would have done it. But because, like you said, they change how the input comes in, my input processing, which is the most annoying part of a lot of these problems, is now not the right way to do it, and I would have to change the entire thing. I know how to do it. I see it. There's a little bit of concern of like dealing with that wrap, and like knowing that like it has to be smart enough to wrap the string, but then also know that you've hit the edge and you need to mod it by the length. Like I can see how to solve the problem.
Yeah.
It sounds not fun. And then out of this, you're supposed to say how many scales, which are the ones that have the letters on them. So how many letters basically have runic words associated with them, all told. So if this scale is used in any rune, it counts. If this scale is not used by any, then it doesn't count. And I don't care how many times it counts each scale. I just care if it was or not. So it's really just, here's a grid, go through it, figure out if this letter has a rune in any direction, and if so, mark it as true, right? Or increment a count or whatever, and then go to the next one. And as soon as you find a match, you just move on.
I mean, that seems like
it's probably, and that's probably how I would go about solving it. It just doesn't sound fun to solve it that way.
Yeah,
I have a library. If I dig through my Advent of Code stuff from last year, I have a library that was starting to like build up grid management stuff, and this would fall under that. And so if I went and dug through my code and found that, I could probably reuse it, but I don't feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember last year in Advent of Code, there was an early part 2 that actually was like quite a huge jump in difficulty. So it seems like Everybody Codes also likes to do that. But the great part about this is that, like you said, you don't have to do it. It's not fun. Don't do it. You can move on to the next quest. I mean, not all of the quests are open, but most of them are. So there's like a good 20 problems to try. You don't have to just stick to one. I mean, would you say that based on what you've seen so far, you want to keep doing this, or are you done?
I do, but I don't know if I'm going to have time. I got a lot of stuff going on at work and a lot of stuff going on in personal life that I'm working on, and I don't know if I'm going to have the time to work on these, but I want to. So I'm hoping I will. Maybe during the break after Advent of Code, I'll come back and do these, or I might work on one. It looks like their aim is to be done at the end of the month. So I think they must have started on like the 10th. Because today we are at Quest 15 has been revealed. Nope, so it would be the 8th then. So they started on the 8th, and they have 15 quests so far. Or they're not doing it every day. I don't know. But the last ones are around 2 days away, around 3 days away, around 4 days away, around 5 days away, and around 6 days away. So I'm like, okay, they're probably doing them every day or unlocking them every day, and it's just they didn't start at the beginning of the month for reasons.
Yeah, I don't know.
They wanted to give people time over Thanksgiving to work on it.
Does this excite you about Advent of Code? Is this like getting you rared up, or?
Yeah, I think this is very well done, and I do not want to diminish. I do not want to diminish what has been done here, but I think Advent of Code does it better. Right, I think its overall setup is cleaner from a user experience standpoint, and I like the problems. I found the problems themselves more interesting. Again, I've done 5 and seen 6 questions of between those first 2 days. So that's like 3 days in Advent of Code, I guess. So my data set is low. So I do want to keep doing them to see how I feel about the whole thing, because I don't like Advent of Code at the end of Advent of Code. When it gets into like super complicated, I'm like, it gets into this isn't fun for me. Standpoint. I don't have the time. If I had infinite time, it would be fun, but I don't, so it's not. So I'll probably finish this up, but I don't know when.
Yeah, same. Advent of Code is a huge time sink, and this seems like it could potentially also be a huge time sink. So no guarantees that I will continue with this, but it's nice to have some variety. One thing that I wanted to mention, I don't know if this is happening for you, but it's freaking me out a little bit. If you go to the main Kingdom of Algorithmia page that shows all the quests on it, there's a link to the Oracle of the Order in green in like the 3rd paragraph, and it has like 2 gears on either side of it.
Oh yeah, I've never
that?
clicked on that.
No, it's not about clicking on it. I'm freaking out because
but the gears are impressive.
If I look at one gear, the other gear stops moving. If I switch, then the other one stops moving. I can't get them to both move at the same time.
Oh what yeah, I see that.
Why is that happening?
If I unfocus my eyes and I get kind of close, I can make them both spin. That is a actually well-known optical illusion. One of the many subreddits I'm on is like just optical illusions, and I've seen that particular thing. Basically, it's the way your brain works. Is it tries to be efficient about its processing, and it will assume things. So if you're looking at one, the other one's out of the corner of your eye, and so your brain is like, that one's not important, and so it's not processing the movement. And then as soon as you focus on that, then you lose it. But if you can get them both, I can get them both, like if I'm in line with them and my eyes are basically like pointing at each one, then I see them both move.
That's wild. That sounds like a typical game dev thing when you're like trying to display like a 3D world, and you do less processing when stuff is not in your viewport, because there's no point in processing it because it takes up too much space. That's like kind of the same thing. It's like just out of my focus, and so my brain is like, nope, don't need to process that. Okay, now you're looking at it, now I'll process it. It's just like I want them both to move from the, I don't know, few feet that I'm away from the screen, and I can't do it. It's freaking me out.
Yeah, I can only do it if I'm directly, like if I'm off to the side, it doesn't work. Actually, now I seem to be able to do it. I seem to have gotten myself there. You can't look at the gears. You have to look at like the word of, and then they'll both spin. But you have to also unfocus your eyes. Anyway, this incidentally is also how like magic works. Like when people are performing magic tricks, that it's kind of that same deal where you look at one thing, they distract you, and then your brain isn't focused on the other things. And you can make it so that you can do that, but it requires being very aware that you're being distracted in the first place.
Interesting. Everybody codes. Who knew where this conversation would lead? All right, well, I think that wraps it up for this episode where we talked about Everybody Codes and the Kingdom of Algorithmia. Go try it out. If you want to hear more discussions, speaking of Advent of Code, we have many episodes from the past where we've talked about Advent of Codes and talk about individual days, puzzles. So if you want to hear those, go to hackingthegrepson.com. As far as the future, we keep trying to put out episodes every other Wednesday. And until we talk back at you with a puzzle or two, we now return you to your regularly scheduled lives already in progress.